Well, Washington breaking the bank on companies going bankrupt, not just Solyndra. Ally Financial getting a $17 billion bailout during the financial crisis, now mulling bankruptcy on its troubled mortgage unit. Lizzie McDonald says one way to get our deficit to stop rising is if D.C. starts letting companies just fail, say goodbye. She's joined by Jonathan Honig and David Callahan. Liz, explain.
Because bankruptcy is a classroom of entrepreneurs and great businessmen. They learn and they fix their businesses, and then they prosper, and stockholders and investors and customers and workers prosper. And what's going on now, Neil, if this was going on, I'm thinking if this happened during the dot-com crisis, would we have been bailing out Pets.com and Webvan? I mean, is this the kind of thinking that really works?
I would have done Pets.com.
Maybe Webvan.
Webvan, I don't know.
Well, I like food,
right.
so.
Okay.
Well, I
what
like
do you
pets
think?
too.
I think this was a clunker of a bailout to begin with. Ally Financial, of course, used to be GMAC, $17 billion. This bailout got toasted by the Congressional Oversight Committee, on the TARP Oversight Committee, saying that it wasn't necessary to preserve the financial system, that money shouldn't have been spent, and there hasn't been enough oversight of trying to make sure that Ally Financial becomes profitable. Government is still in the hole here for billions of dollars.
Jonathan, this gets back to your fear about what you do for one, you do for others, and the numbers just get bigger, right?
And of course, everyone lines up for their bailout, Neil, even though there's so much evidence that every time government intervenes in the marketplace, wealth destruction is the only result. As you mentioned, Ally, $17 billion. Shareholders now are not actual shareholders. They're taxpayers who are involuntary shareholders. And whether it's Solyndra with $500,000, Freddie Mac now has its hand out for another $6 billion. I mean, this is serious money and such a slap in the face for taxpayers who are cutting their own spending, tightening their own belts. It's a real shame. It's thievery from the American taxpayer.
In the bigger pictures, I was talking to this walkaway.com guy earlier, Lizzie, we have built in, even though you might be on the right side legally, a sort of an ethical lapse here where people kind of expect this. If in doubt, bail them out. If you can't take it, someone will take it from you. And it's weighed into both our corporate, our private enterprise, our daily lives.
And it's such a dangerous way of thinking that you can just let your company be run into the ground, and then you can turn with the tin cup to the U.S. taxpayer. And Wall Street got a clue about that. And John Corzine, when he was senator, got a clue about that too. He organized one of the first bailouts of the airline industry after 9/11, which went under the radar screen. But you're right, Neil. I mean, this is a really dangerous way of thinking for capitalism in America.
The dirt of the cigar on John Corzine, not to digress too much, Dave, is he bet on big government working in Europe. And he bet wrong, essentially. But it's not the first time he's bet on big government, and others bet on big government. But what do you make of the trend here and what's happening in Europe as a result? We see Italy now under duress, Greece, fears about Portugal, now Ireland, and on and on. It doesn't stop.
Well, just to come back to Liz's point, I mean, I think that the 2008 financial crisis was unique. We were at the precipice of a potential Great Depression. TARP, I think, was necessary. Government has an important role to play in the economy when the stakes are that high.
We'll never know, though.
But
we'll never know.
Well, yeah, but keep in mind that there was a study suggesting that without TARP, without the stimulus, we could have hit 16% unemployment. Also, keep in mind that we did.
But that's like proving a negative, unprovable.
But keep in mind that we did let a lot of companies go out of business during the last crash. We let Enron go under. We let WorldCom go under. We let all those dot-coms go under. So this was an exceptional situation.
That's the whole point, though, that bankruptcy actually was a positive net result because it allowed new capital to be raised, it allowed the market to progress. I mean, bankruptcy is reality, and all these government efforts to intervene, to prop up businesses, to pick winners and losers essentially evades that reality, prolongs the process, prolongs the crisis, makes it more expensive.
You remember that line, like, capitalism without bankruptcy is like religion without hell. That was Frank Borman, who ran Eastern Airlines. But I'm wondering, what are we going to do next? Remove the net in tennis? I mean, are we going to get to that? I'm joking, but this is how it feels in our society.
Boy, that would have come in handy for my tennis game.
Totally for mine.
Yeah, right.
Well, look, we got to strike the right balance here. You don't want to be bailing out companies left and right, but you don't want to handcuff government if we face another very high
it's a slippery slope. You can't be a little bit pregnant, right? Once what you do for one, you do for all. And whether you argue, and I can respectfully disagree on whether the TARP bailout was necessary, what it triggered was the series of expectation. What you did for banks, you got to do for me. You know, people didn't buy a car until they got the cash for clunker program. If they're in under duress with their college loan, they want to bail out. And away we go.
I think we should make the banks pay for their own bailouts. There was a provision.
Oh my God! They paid the money back.
There was a provision in Dodd-Frank that got shot down. Would have been in the legislation to create a special fund that they would have to.
This is the same legislation that left out Freddie and Fannie.
That they would have to pay into to bail themselves out if there was another crisis. That got shot down.
I think
and that was too bad.
I think Congress should be paid in Fannie and Freddie bonds whenever they make mistakes.
Wouldn't that be a pistol? Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, it's all we hear now, Neil. And what is the rallying cry of Occupy Wall Street? Banks got bailed out, we got sold out. So, of course, every industry, everyone is lining up now with their handout for their bailout. And in fact, consumers are waiting for those incentives.
Yeah, but Jonathan, your near and dear Wall Street doesn't move unless the bailout's in the work, and then they sell off when it looks like, in Europe's case, it's falling apart. That's what happens there.
I think that's, unfortunately, Neil, the net result of government intervention is that you can't trust any price. How can you trust a price for interest rates, for insurance, for real estate when government is so intricately involved in every element of the economy?
Well, I wish we had time to unravel this, but you've all depressed the hell out of me. Here's Lou.